My name is Dave Evelyn from Johnson University, and this is the bringing online skills into your course. It's going to be presented by Terry Golightly of Johnson University. I did have a bio of you stored somewhere else, and I'm not exactly sure if I can bring it up, but I will tell you, Terry Golightly has been working in this sphere for quite a long time, and she's got a wealth of experience to bring to bear on this. And as you have questions, I really do encourage you put those things into the chat area. She's got a good wealth of things to offer from her experience and her expertise in research. The session is being recorded, and as you've had those questions, please feel free to put those into the comments area. I do apologize ahead of time about the font issue here. This is in a PDF, but I'm sure Terry will make sure she's got a copy of this posted to the discussion forum area inside the virtual conference site. So without any further ado, Terry, I'll advance the slides for you.
Okay.
If you'll let me know when I need to do that.
Well, go ahead and advance the first one.
All right.
A lot of institutions typically struggle with how to train their students to be successful online. And they sometimes develop the attitude of, this is the online generation, they don't need help. They already know what to do. Sometimes institutions develop courses in how to train students. But the fact of the matter is, students need to learn how to be successful within the courses they are taking. They don't need a separate course. It's better design of the course, and research has shown often, I'm sure most of you know this, that students often do not transfer what they learn in one course to what they need to do in another course. So our best practice for teaching online is to design it within the course. Now, Brown University, that's the next slide, is ranked at 14 in the country by U.S. News and World Report, and number 7 by Forbes magazine, and like 53rd in the world by some international global assessment of universities. And Brown has posted tips for their faculty on the best practices for online learning. And I think it's really interesting that the very first thing that they say is, as you design your online course, consult with an instructional designer. A lot of faculty resist doing this. They say, I know my content, I know what to do, I'm going to put that out there. But we're going to unpack these 6 items, but we're going to start with the first one, which is on the next slide. What can an instructional designer do for you as a course developer? There are several things. Instructional designers are not concerned about your content so much as the learning process, and this is their expertise. As experts in learning and course design, they can help in key areas of refining learning objectives, which is a problem for many faculty, aligning them with the program and institutional goals. They are experts in the LMS navigation and with other online tools and resources. They should also be able to help with accessibility and universal design principles. And they can help you with the scaffolding techniques you need to use in order to help your students be more successful. The next slide, the second tip from Brown to help your university students to be successful is to include performance criteria and rubrics. I know some professors like to hide those for some reason, I don't know, but it's needful for adult students particularly that they know what it is you're looking for from them for their performance criteria. You should find ways to encourage daily login and participation through your learning activities. Use the calendar tool with dated activities linked to the tool. This helps keep your students active into the course. Include instructions not only in the syllabus but in the assessment tool and the lesson page. You shouldn't make your students go look for their instructions, like only put them in assignments or only put them in the forums. They should be where the students need to see them. Use regular announcements and alerts to keep students involved and engaged in your course. This will help really help with their engagement and feeling like they're part of the community, because ultimately we're building community here and we're building students' investment in what's happening. Please keep going. You want to engage with your students early and often. You want to establish teacher presence. If you throw stuff up on the wall and expect students to read it, it's a distance course. It's not an online course. You need to show that you're there, that you're involved with them. You need to introduce yourself and have an activity where students introduce themselves. That's often in discussion forums, but it doesn't have to be. Welcome students and comment on their introductions so that they know that you've read them. You can survey your students on their interests and goals for the course, and you can personalize announcements and messages with frequent updates and reminders. Going ahead, you need to model behavior in discussions, but you need to not take over the conversation. It's a really tough balance with discussion forums because students need to know that you're there. I have had a professor say to me, I want to go to the grading page where it tells me the number of words that the student posted in the discussion. That teacher is not involved in the discussion, but he needs to be. Students need your feedback, but you shouldn't take over the conversation. It's not about you, it's about them. A helpful guideline from Brown is to be in the discussion twice daily for about 30 minutes at a time. Comment on those students who are particularly insightful to stimulate more conversation, and nudge students who maybe are underperforming, maybe getting off track. If it's bad enough, you might need to go to them privately in messages. The point is that you're there to stimulate and guide, but not to dominate. The next slide. Feedback is not just a grade. You need to give them good feedback in their assessments all across the board in any activity that they engage in. It's a key part of your engagement with them and with their learning progress. It's helpful when you can to provide affirmation of some aspect of a student's activity, even when there's a lot to correct. Even if it's just saying, I'm glad you turned this in on time. Something positive to start with, and be appropriate. You are assessing them and you are coaching them, two different activities. You want to refine and you want to help them navigate through the learning content. This is why comments should be specific as needed. You also want to point the student to relevant resources to follow up. So you can say, oh, you might find in such and such publication where this idea is followed through. Or another option for thinking on this could be, one thing that I've noticed is the quick turnaround on feedback. Respond quickly, because they're in the process of still learning. And if it's 2 weeks later before you get back to them, they're not there anymore. It's just not where they are. The sixth tip from Brown is that you manage your time wisely. It's important that in your course, you post your response time for grading and responding to emails. Say, I'll get back with you on emails within 24 hours, 3 days on this writing assignment, that kind of thing. They need to know when and how they will hear from you. And then you need to be on time. If you delay your responses, you delay their learning. Tell students how late assignments will be graded when they turn something in late, and if that's going to take some extended time from you. Life happens to all of us. If you need more time, you get sick or something else happens, let the students know. Stay present in the course and don't get so caught up that you begin to dominate the discussion. The students need to hear from each other and not just you. The next slide, please. Students need to have clear learning objectives in the course. If there's not a handy instructional designer around, there is an online tool at easygenerator.com that can help walk you through the process of building a learning objective. Briefly, considering Bloom's taxonomy, know the level of competency you want the student to achieve. Use an observable verb to describe the behavior. Add any criteria that will be used to show learning has occurred, like writing a paper on such and such, or passing a vocabulary quiz, or whatever. And then you consider a variety of assessments in order to accommodate diverse needs of students. In other words, offer the student the choice of a quiz or a paper. Program, course, and lesson objectives need to be aligned with this assessment so that you can document the achievement of the objective. But it doesn't need to be just a quiz or because different students of different capabilities have different needs. Continuing on. What are some quick ways you can provide scaffolding in the course to help students move through the tasks that are needed? Give them instructions in the place that they seem to need them. Don't make them refer to some other place. Assume someone needs directions to simple tasks that you might think are obvious. Provide the checklist tool to help them track their progress. Use the calendar tool to help them look ahead. They can see their calendar tool whenever they log on to Sakai because it's a synoptic tool, and they don't even have to be in the course to see that the quiz is tomorrow, for instance. Use announcements or the bullhorn tool for alerts and reminders. And one really important thing is don't give them poorly copied or inaccessible content. Continuing. We haven't said much about accessibility yet. There's a lot to be said, that's for sure, but there's also, it's a whole big topic. There are definitely ways to be proactive to make sure your content is accessible to all users. We want to have content in sections on the lesson page that are organized by hierarchical heading styles. In Sakai, the section headers are assumed to be a heading 3 level. Above that, you should have a page title at a heading level 1 and a summary title for each lesson page. That might look like week 1 doing the da-da-da. And then underneath that, a lesson description. It says this week we're going to look at this and that and the other aspect. And then the sections that follow that would be at heading level 3. When you use the collapsible sections, those are firm at a heading level 3. Within the section level, you can have heading 4 through 6. But you need to keep those straightforward and accessible. Those heading levels are key for navigation for people who are using assistive technology. This means there needs to be clear and straightforward navigation. You shouldn't burden students with your organizational idiosyncrasies, like multiple units. Somebody needs to mute themselves. We shouldn't burden students with organizational idiosyncrasies like Unit 1, Lesson 3. This doesn't make sense to the students, and we shouldn't burden them with that, or with weird file names. We need to keep it simple, with multiple ways for students to get to and to interact with content such as video and text. Students will benefit from options for them to give evidence of learning, such as choosing either a quiz or a paper. Always, 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 all students need clean, accessible documents with alternative text or accompanying text explaining any significant meaning of graphics. Keep it simple. Don't give them anything they don't need, but just what they do need. Going ahead. Attendance in an online course is not as easy as tracking somebody who's sitting in a seat, but there should be clear expectations for their participation, and it should be checked through their learning activities and/or through the statistics tool. You should be in the course almost daily, keeping track of their participation and their interactions. Let them know, you know, whether or not they are there. and then intervene appropriately with those who are dropping off. Your institution will have procedures for notifying dean, advisor, student success center of the appropriate ways to intervene in this. Going on. This is all about building a community of inquiry. And in this community, your presence is important. Introductions matter. Introduction from you to the students, from the students to each other and you. Conversation can happen in a general discussion forum area. Use the new Commons tool for social media kind of purposes. Cultivate group projects and peer activities. And use announcements and alerts to keep things going. On the lesson page, there's a special little command that if you do the double bracket, first name, close brackets, the student's first name will actually appear on the page where you put it. So you can make it personalized in that sense, and that student goes, oh, it knows me. The teacher knows me. Limit your participation in discussion, but don't eliminate it. Go ahead. Ways to maximize the use of discussion forums includes developing open-ended questions requiring problem solving or research or reflection or other types of participation. I often see something that says something like, okay, at the end of chapter 7, answer the 5 questions there. That's not the best use for a discussion forum. It's something that provokes conversation. You want to read all of the posts, but participate judiciously. Just show your presence enough so that students know you're not ignoring them. You want them talking to each other, and you want to affirm someone who's particularly good and nudge someone who may be going off track. There may be times when your class is too large to have one meaningful discussion. You got 30 people in a discussion, sometimes it's chaos. Break them into groups. A very vigorous group management tool in Sakai, and this is a great time to do it, and Forums is very responsive to this. The calendar tool may be one of the most underutilized tools. Sakai allows, it can be seen, it can be used to great effect because students see the events whenever they log on, and it will receive email notices when events update or are becoming due. Once you've selected the calendar tool, it shows up in any of the assessment tools that are dated, such as quizzes and assessments and whatnot, and it gives you a chance that you're going to post this to the calendar. Go ahead. Course emails are best kept within the platform for archiving and appeals purposes. A lot of times teachers will give out their email address, okay, but if there's email that's relevant to the conducting of the course and if an issue comes up later on in an appeal or some other event like this, you'll find it having that email recorded within the course will be a real advantage. You can use the messages tool also as a discussion forum tool or for informal conversation with selected people. This is a good way to contact students who are not participating to see what kind of help they need. If you contact them in outside email, then the course doesn't have a record that you tried to contact them again in the case of an appeal. So keep students in the loop for course and campus events as well, because a lot of times that's going to help the students feel connected to your campus. The next slide. We're going through this real quick. So the key takeaways here is that there are lots of ways we can help students succeed in their online courses. It takes direct involvement from designer and instructor. The instructor needs to be present in the course frequently, responding to students and events. We need to give them all the tools they need to succeed. We need to give them instructions and feedback where and when they need them. And we need to be responsive to what is going on with them in their learning activities and aware of when they're slipping and how to intervene. An online course does not run itself. It needs a hands-on instructor and a developer who is thinking ahead of any obstacles that may show up.
That places us pretty close to 10 minutes left in the session. I know we've got several folks that are in on the session, and Terry, I know this presentation has really covered a lot, a really wide gambit of things that we need and can be doing to address how we do online courses in general, and they're not necessarily specific to Sakai, but some of them are. But I would encourage anybody, if you've got questions that have come along, or even comments or tips, or even maybe even other experiences that you've had either as an instructor or as an instructional designer that you'd like to share or ask Terry to comment on, now is a really good time to do that.
I'd love to hear stories from other people and their experiences on this.
Yeah, Terry, I know that in just working back and forth between the two of us over the couple of years, I know both of us have had lots of stories. Sometimes they're sort of, stories that just sort of are aghast, based on what we understand about instructional design and that sort of thing, about what some faculty just don't have an awareness for. And it's not about, trying to, bludgeon them over the head at all. It's a different space to be in, and trying to figure out how to work that space and to make that space work best for not just the faculty themselves, but also ultimately those students, because we want them to learn, can itself have a learning curve. So, yeah.
It really struck me that the first thing that Brown University said was consult with an instructional designer. And knowing how reluctant so many faculty are to do that, it's almost a point of pride that I don't need assistance on this. I can do this myself. But there's no need for that kind of thing. There's no need to do it yourself.
I will say Harold has a question in the chat. He's just asked it. He says, it's been my observation that people want notification tools and notifications, and would rather rely on those than making a habit to visiting a site daily. He asks, how do you encourage both faculty and students to actually visit the course site and be proactive rather than reactive?
It would seem to me that even some small activity that's expected, a short posting or a reading question, a reading comes up and I want you to click off that you've done this reading or that you've done this activity, even if it's a short activity, and it's an online course. It doesn't have to be daily. My daily advocating a daily presence is mostly for the instructor. If the student can do it 2 or 3 times a week, that's fine. But the instructor needs to be involved enough in the course. I mean, if an instructor on the ground has 3 sessions a week, he doesn't only show up one day. But
that's an interesting point.
That daily involvement of the instructor in the course means that that instructor has a real feel for where the students are in the course. And then you don't have to say, okay, Friday's my day to go check the discussion forums. Well, that puts a lot onto Friday. And if Friday's the day that you wake up with the flu, but a short participation time of the instructor every day into the course is going to help everybody.
I was going to say, I feel like some of Harold's questions sort of gets at that idea where a lot of online courses, for example, ask students to post on a particular day and then reply by a particular day. And a lot of that, I think, is meant to carry a conversation forward.
Yeah.
And yet seemingly sometimes we have a lot of students that essentially just wait until the very last minute to do what they're required to do to, check off the task. And yet that also sort of can hamstring an instructor when they're expecting to, either reply or score or grade those discussion forum postings. And then you have other well-meaning students that said, I did post early and there was no one else that posted, so I had no one else to converse with.
That's hard when there's just,
yeah.
I remember taking classes when there were 3 people in the class and only 2 of us participated in discussions. And it was just kind of like, why bother? It's really difficult sometimes.
So I know go ahead.
I was just gonna say there's not an automatic cure for everything. Just some best things that we can try to do.
Yeah, I know one instructor actually facilitated a live session as a substitute for the discussion forum. So he would actually hold a live discussion sometime during the first part of the week. And if you weren't in that first live discussion about the topic, then he held you responsible for the passive discussion forum later in the week. Now, you didn't get penalized, but it said, look, you're an adult. You can choose to attend the live session and be engaged and involved there. Or if I don't see you there, then I'll expect you to have some sort of engaging thing to contribute to the same conversation in the passive discussion forum area. So.
I like that, actually. We didn't talk about the meetings tool and the video and the live interaction like that, and that's probably a lack on my part this way. But I remember doing that in my courses as a student, there was at least one day a week where there was an hour discussion, and if you weren't there, you were responsible for seeing the video and responding to it, but you made every effort to be there. But then the constraints of having an online course as opposed to an in-seat course is that you have to give way to the fact that maybe not everybody can be there at 6 on Wednesday, for whatever reason. And it may be a totally valid reason, like, oh, I work evenings, and so I can't be there in an evening session. Well, okay. So you have to work with that. But that's just one of those defining considerations that you have to put.
Anybody else have any other questions? Just to kind of reinforce, I'm sure Terry will get a good font copy of the presentation up into the forums area. And honestly, I have to give really good credit to Wilma Hodges and the folks at Longsight and other folks that have actually been part of the organization of the Sakai Virtual Conference this year, in just facilitating a lot of the discussion around the presentations in the discussion forum area. I had a presentation earlier this morning, and I've already had 2 people post, and I'm anxious to get back to those things and actually see where the conversation goes about those aspects of things. So definitely make sure you check that out. We have a couple of more minutes if anybody wants to comment.
Yeah, well,
I think Terry's information and contact information is out there too.
Yeah, putting my accessibility expert hat on, this speaks to why you shouldn't use non-universal fonts. This is accidental president font, and not every computer has that font. And so I don't know why I didn't remember that this doesn't work on every computer, but that's a good accessibility point, is this can happen when you do kind of out of the box things on documents that you write to present to students. It's a good reason why you should stick with those basic universally available fonts.
Harold actually said that your presentation is posted in the forum actually looks okay.
Oh, well, maybe he's got accidental president font on his computer.
Accidentally, perhaps?
Maybe.
Good for you, Harold. Very, very good. I would actually tell everybody. I mean, Terry's a phenomenal resource to seek out. She's got great feedback and insight. She actually works a lot with our Johnson University online faculty to look at their courses and to look to see, where are those areas of improvement that can be really, really applied. And you can definitely see from her presentation, there's a lot of things that she has to share. We always come alongside our faculty and say, we are not the people who are experts of your content, but we do want to help you expertly deliver your content to help your students be successful. So Any other questions before we close out the session? We've got about a minute left. Well, all right then. Thank you all for coming to this session of the Sakai Virtual Conference 2019. Like I said before, this will be recorded and put on the Apereo channel. Thank you, Terry Golightly, for your presentation and everything you had to share. And thank you everyone else for attending. You all have a good day and have a good chance to get to your next session.
Thanks, Dave.
You're welcome. Glad to do it.